Did you know that one of Hollywood's greatest actresses almost turned down the role that would change her life forever? Joan Crawford was tired. She was worn out from playing the same beautiful, glamorous women over and over. But then a script came to her, a story about a mother willing to fight the entire world for her daughter, a mother who gets her hands dirty, a mother who fails and suffers and keeps going anyway. Joan Crawford read those words, and something inside her woke up. She knew this was her moment. She knew this was real. The year was 1945, and Mildred Pierce was about to become a masterpiece. But behind the scenes, almost nothing went the way anyone planned. Strange things happened. Secrets were kept. Magic occurred in the most unexpected ways. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about Mildred Pierce. Fact number 20. Joan Crawford's career was officially over. Before she got the role, nobody wanted Joan Crawford anymore. By 1944, the movie studios had decided she was finished. Directors didn't call. Producers passed on her. Even her own studio, MGM, didn't believe in her. The studio system back then was brutal. They controlled actors like puppets. They told you what to wear, who to be seen with, what to say in public. Joan Crawford had spent 17 years as a golden idol, beautiful, perfect, untouchable. But beauty fades, and when it did, the studios forgot about you. Joan was 39 years old. In Hollywood, that might as well be ancient. She was considered box office poison. Can you imagine? One of the biggest stars in the world, and nobody wanted to hire her. She felt invisible. She felt abandoned. The studio that owned her contract was letting her sit at home, doing nothing. Other actresses were getting roles. Other actresses were becoming stars. But Joan Crawford? She was waiting. She was hoping. She was desperate. Then Mildred Pierce came along, and it wasn't from MGM. It was from Warner Brothers, a different studio, a different chance, a completely different world waiting to be discovered. Fact number 19. The director didn't even want to make this movie. At first, Michael Curtis was a famous director. He made big action movies. He made powerful dramas. But when the studio first asked him to direct Mildred Pierce, he said no, not interested. He thought it was just another story about a woman's problems, just another soap opera, just another waste of his time. Michael Curtis wanted to direct important films, films about men and war and adventure, not films about mothers and daughters and sacrifice. But the studio pushed. The studio insisted. The studio said, "Michael, trust us. This will be special." He didn't believe them. He thought they were wrong. He thought it would be boring. He took the job anyway because the studio paid him, and that was that. What happened next shocked everyone, including Michael Curtis himself. He discovered something in that script he never expected to find. He found humanity. He found pain. He found truth. He discovered that a story about a mother and her daughter could be more powerful than any war movie. Michael Curtis became obsessed. He poured his heart into every frame. He pushed his actors harder than he'd ever pushed anyone before. The director who didn't want to make the movie ended up creating a masterpiece. Fact number 20. Joan Crawford was told to cut her hair, and she almost refused. Joan Crawford's beautiful long hair was famous. Her curls were iconic. Her waves were part of who she was. When the director told her to cut her hair for the role of Mildred Pierce, Joan felt something inside her break. This wasn't just about hair. This was about losing her identity. This was about becoming someone new, someone ordinary, someone without glamour. For a movie star, that's terrifying. Joan had built her entire career on beauty and perfection. Her hair was part of that perfect image. Now, they wanted her to look like a regular housewife. They wanted her to look tired and worn and used up. They wanted her to look like a woman who had suffered. Joan cried. She actually cried when they cut her hair short. But something magical happened when those curls fell to the floor. Without the glamorous waves, Joan's face changed. Without the perfect styling, she looked real. She looked like someone you'd know. She looked like your neighbor, your friend, your mother, She looked like a woman who had been broken and built herself back up. That haircut wasn't just a costume choice, it was a transformation. It was Joan Crawford saying goodbye to the old version of herself and hello to an actress. Fact number 18. The famous pie scene was shot 17 times. There's a moment in the movie where Mildred serves pie to her daughter. It's such a simple scene, just a mother putting food on her daughter's plate. But it took 17 attempts to get it right. 17 times. Joan Crawford was sweating. Her hands were shaking. The director wanted something specific. He wanted to see love in how Mildred served that pie. He wanted to see hope. He wanted to see a mother pouring all her dreams onto a plate. By the 10th take, Joan was exhausted. By the 15th take, her eyes were red from fake crying. But she kept going. She kept trying. She kept reaching for that perfect moment. What was the director looking for? He was looking for the moment when a mother offers something precious and doesn't know if her daughter will accept it. He was looking for vulnerability. He was looking for that split second of fear and hope mixed together. On the 17th take, Joan did something unexpected. She didn't perform the scene. She lived it. She forgot about the cameras and the crew and the director. She just became Mildred. She just became a mother who loved her daughter so much it hurt. That's the take they used. That's the version you see in the movie. What looked simple was actually 17 different attempts at human truth. Fact number 17. The actress playing her daughter was difficult and demanding. The role of Mildred Pierce, Mildred's terrible daughter, was played by Anne Blyth. Anne was young, talented, and incredibly difficult to work with. She had demands. She had opinions. She had a temper. On set, Anne would argue with the director. She would refuse to do scenes the way he wanted them done. She would walk off when she was unhappy. This drove everyone crazy. But here's the weird part. This difficult, challenging attitude was exactly what the character of Veda needed. Mildred Pierce is selfish. Veda is mean. Veda is ungrateful. Anne Blyth played a character who ruins her mother's life, a character so awful that audiences would hate her. And Anne's real difficult personality helped her create that character with perfect authenticity. Joan Crawford had to act like her daughter was destroying her dreams over and over and over. She had to watch this young actress play the ungrateful, spoiled brat who breaks her heart. But Joan didn't let her personal frustration with Anne show on screen. Instead, she channeled all of it into her performance. She made it real. She made it hurt. What looked like a beautiful mother-daughter drama was actually powered by real frustration and real conflict between the two actresses. Fact number 16. They shot the movie in black and white. Even though color was available by 1945, Hollywood knew how to make color movies. Color film existed. But the studio chose to shoot Mildred Pierce in black and white. Why? Because black and white looked more serious. Black and white looked more dramatic. Black and white made you feel the pain. When you see color, your eye gets distracted by brightness and beauty. But black and white forces you to look at faces. It forces you to look at emotions. It makes shadows mean something. Black and white makes sadness look sadder. It makes love look deeper. The director understood this. He knew that the story of Mildred Pierce needed black and white. It needed that gritty, real, honest feeling. Color would have made it look pretty. Black and white made it look true. Some people thought this was a budget choice. Some people thought they couldn't afford color. But it was actually a creative decision. The director was smart. He knew that this story wasn't about pretty pictures. It was about ugly truth. Fact number 15. Joan Crawford wore the same clothes for days. Here's something almost nobody knows. Joan Crawford wore the same costume for days during filming. Not the same style, the same exact clothes, the same dress, the same apron, the same shoes. This was intentional. The director wanted Mildred to look like she was living the same painful day over and over. He wanted the costume to show that life wasn't moving forward. He wanted the audience to feel trapped, just like Mildred felt trapped. So Joan wore that dress every single day for a week of filming, It got dirty, it got wrinkled, it started to fall apart. Joan was uncomfortable. The fabric was itchy. The smell was getting bad. But she refused to complain. She understood what the director was trying to do. He was trying to make the costume tell the story of a woman whose life was falling apart. And it worked. When you watch the movie, you feel like Mildred has been in that same dress forever. You feel like she's trapped. You feel like time isn't moving. That wasn't acting. That was commitment. Fact number 14. The script was adapted from a novel that Warner Brothers bought as a joke. The original story came from a novel written by James M. Cain. Warner Brothers bought the rights, but they didn't think it was important. They thought it was just another pulp novel, just another story about a woman and her problems. Nobody was excited about it. Nobody thought it would become anything special. The studio basically bought it as a joke, something to maybe turn into a B-movie, a low-budget film, a movie nobody would care about. But then someone actually read it carefully. Someone saw something everyone else had missed. They saw the power in the story. They saw the pain. They understood that this wasn't just a simple tale. This was a story about sacrifice and betrayal and love and heartbreak all mixed together. The novel sat on a shelf for months before anyone noticed it, and when they finally did, everything changed. What started as a joke became a masterpiece. What the studio bought thinking it was worthless turned out to be one of the most important films ever made. Fact number 13. Joan Crawford. Prepared for the role by actually cooking and baking. Joan Crawford was famous. She had servants. She had people who did everything for her. She'd never actually cooked a meal in her entire life. But for this role, she decided to learn. She decided to understand what Mildred experienced. So Joan Crawford went into a real kitchen. She baked real pies. She cooked real meals. She cut real vegetables. Her hands got blisters. Her back got sore from standing. She burned herself. She made mistakes. For the first time, Joan understood what it meant to spend hours in a kitchen. She understood the patience it required. She understood the love that goes into feeding people you care about. When she stood in front of the camera serving food to her screen daughter, Joan wasn't pretending. She knew what that labor meant. She knew what that sacrifice felt like. She had experienced it. What looked like a simple scene of cooking and serving was actually Joan Crawford sharing something real with her audience, the knowledge that motherhood is work. Fact number 12. The famous slap scene. Happened by accident. There's a moment where Mildred slaps her daughter. It's shocking. It's violent. It's real. But here's the secret. It was supposed to be a light, fake slap. The kind where the actress flinches before the hand even touches her face. But something went wrong. Or maybe something went right. When Joan Crawford's hand went up, Ann Blyth didn't move. She didn't flinch. And Joan's hand connected. She actually slapped her. The crew gasped. The director froze. Everyone thought it was a disaster. But when they watched the film, that slap looked more real than any fake slap ever could. You could see the shock in Ann's face. You could see the pain in Joan's face. It was a moment of real violence on screen, but it was also a moment of real acting. The director decided to keep it. He decided that accident was actually perfect. That real slap told the truth better than any performance ever could. What was supposed to be a light fake moment became one of the most powerful scenes in movie history. Fact number 11. Joan Crawford won the Academy Award, but she wasn't even nominated before filming started. Nobody expected Joan Crawford to win anything. She was considered washed up. She was invisible. The studio system had already decided to throw her away, but when Mildred Pierce came out, something extraordinary happened. Critics noticed. Audiences noticed. People started talking. People started caring. By the time awards season came around, Joan Crawford's name was on everyone's lips. She didn't just get nominated, she won. Joan Crawford, the actress the studios had given up on, won the Academy Award for Best Actress. It was a comeback story like nothing Hollywood had ever seen. It was proof that you can be forgotten and then remembered. It was proof that one great role can change everything. When Joan walked up to accept her Oscar, she was crying. Real tears. Real joy. Real vindication. Nobody could ignore her anymore. Nobody could say she was finished. The broken career had been healed by this single, perfect film. Fact number 10, the director shot extra scenes that were never used in the final movie. Michael Curtis filmed scenes that never made it to the final cut. Entire moments, entire conversations, entire moments of Mildred's life that the audience never saw. Why? Because when he watched the raw footage, he realized something. He realized that some scenes, no matter how beautifully filmed, didn't serve the story. He realized that the most powerful version of this movie was actually shorter than he'd planned. This was unusual. Most directors fight to keep their scenes in. Most directors believe every moment they film is precious. But Michael Curtis understood something deeper. He understood that sometimes what you don't show is more powerful than what you do show. Sometimes the audience's imagination is better than your image. Sometimes silence is louder than dialogue. So he cut, he trimmed, he removed beautiful scenes because they weren't honest. The final movie is stronger because of what's missing. Fact number 9. The kitchen set was built to be uncomfortably small. The director insisted that the main set, Mildred's kitchen and home, be built smaller than normal, smaller than real, so small that actors could barely move without bumping into walls. Joan Crawford felt trapped. She felt confined. She felt uncomfortable every single day she was in that kitchen. This was on purpose. The director wanted the set itself to tell the story. He wanted the walls to feel like they were closing in on Mildred. He wanted the kitchen to feel like a cage. And it worked. Joan's natural tension and discomfort from being in that tiny space translated directly into her performance. Her character felt trapped because Joan actually felt trapped. What looked like normal kitchen scenes were actually filmed in a prison-like space. Fact number 8. The movie almost had a completely different ending. The studio wanted a happy ending. They wanted Mildred to find love again. They wanted her to marry the man who'd been waiting for her. They wanted everything to be resolved and perfect and safe. But the director said no. He said that would be a lie. He said that Mildred's story doesn't have a neat, clean ending. He said that the power of the story is that it's messy and complicated. He said that some people don't get to be rescued by love. Sometimes you have to rescue yourself. The director fought with the studio over the ending for weeks. Studio executives wanted one thing, the director wanted another. But the director won. He stood his ground. He refused to make it pretty. He refused to make it false. The ending we see is the ending that respects the truth of Mildred's journey. It's not happy. It's not sad. It's real. Fact number 7. Joan Crawford refused to use a double for physical scenes. The studio offered Joan Crawford a stunt double. Someone younger, someone stronger, someone to do all the physical work. Joan refused. She said no. She said she would do every scene herself, no matter how hard it was. She was 50 years old at the time. That's not young by any standard, but especially in Hollywood. But Joan insisted. She insisted on climbing stairs. She insisted on carrying heavy objects. She insisted on doing all the work herself. Why? Because she wanted Mildred's exhaustion to be real. She wanted the audience to see a real woman struggling. She wanted them to feel her pain in her body, not just in her face. So Joan Crawford pushed her body to the limit. She was sore. She was tired. She was worn out. But every moment of exhaustion on screen was genuine. Fact number 6. The dialogue was improvised in several key scenes. People think movie scripts are written word for word, and actors just say those words. But that's not always true. In several important moments, Joan Crawford and the other actors were told to improvise, to make it up as they went. The director believed that real dialogue sounds different than written dialogue. He believed that real conversation has pauses and mistakes and repetition. So he would set up a scene and say, "Just talk, just live this moment." Joan would begin. She would speak from her character's heart instead of from a page. What came out was more honest than any script could be. It was messier. It was more real. It was sometimes funny in unexpected ways. It was sometimes heartbreaking. The camera kept rolling, and the actors just lived. Fact number 5. The famous piano scene took an entire week to film. There's a moment in the movie where Mildred hears her daughter playing piano. It's just a sound. Just music, just a mother listening to her daughter's talent. But it took an entire week to get it right, a whole week. Joan Crawford would listen to the piano, the camera would watch her face, the director would look for a specific emotion, then he'd say cut, and they'd try again. Over and over, Joan's face had to show love and pride and pain all at the same time. Joan's face had to show a mother watching her daughter become someone she'll never be. That's complicated. That's hard to act. That's impossible to fake. By the end of the week, Joan was exhausted, but she'd found it. She'd found that perfect moment where love and loss happen at exactly the same time. Fact number 4. The movie was edited down from 6 hours of raw footage. The director shot so much film, so many takes, so many angles, so many moments. When the editor started working on all of it, there was 6 hours of material. 6 hours. The final movie is 1 hour and 11 minutes. So most of what they filmed ended up on the cutting room floor. This was necessary. This was painful. Because some of those scenes were beautiful. Some of those moments were powerful. But they didn't belong in the final story. The editor made thousands of decisions. Cut here. Keep that. Remove this. Keep that. Over and over and over. By the time they were finished, every single frame served the story. There was no fat, there was no waste. Every second mattered. Some people think editing is boring technical work, but it's actually the most creative part of making a movie. The editor is telling you what to care about. The editor is controlling how you feel. Fact number 3. Joan Crawford learned. She won the Oscar while at home, sick in bed. Joan Crawford wasn't even at the Academy Awards ceremony. She was home. She was sick. She was so sick that she couldn't attend her own award show. Can you imagine? The moment your career is being redeemed, and you're lying in bed with the flu. Joan was devastated. She thought she'd missed the announcement. But someone called her. Someone told her she'd won. Joan cried in that bed. She couldn't celebrate with everyone else. She couldn't walk on stage. She couldn't give a speech. She had to accept her greatest honor while wearing pajamas in a dark room. But in a way, that made the victory even more real. It wasn't about the glamour or the ceremony. It was about the work. It was about her performance. It was about the fact that her talent had been recognized. Joan's illness didn't make the Oscar less valuable. It made it more honest. Fact number 2. The movie wasn't originally going to be called Mildred Pierce. Different titles were considered. They were going to call it something else, something that sounded more dramatic, something that sounded more important. But someone suggested keeping the original novel's title, Mildred Pierce. Such a simple name, just a woman's name, not a dramatic title, not a fancy title, just a woman. And that turned out to be perfect, because the movie isn't about some big exciting event. It's about a woman's life. It's about her struggle. It's about her pain and her love and her sacrifice. By calling it simply Mildred Pierce, the title tells you what the movie is really about. It's about Mildred, it's about her. Nothing else matters. That simple choice changed how people understood the entire film. Fact number 1. Joan Crawford almost gave up on Hollywood. 2 weeks before she got this role. Joan Crawford was done. She was ready to quit. She had a house in the country. She was planning to leave Los Angeles. She was planning to leave acting. She was planning to leave the life that had abandoned her. 2 weeks before Mildred Pierce came to her, Joan Crawford was packing boxes. She was saying goodbye. She had given up hope. She didn't believe in herself anymore. She didn't believe the industry would ever want her again. Then the phone rang. It was her agent. It was the studio. It was an offer, a role, a chance. Joan almost turned it down. She was so tired of being rejected. She was so tired of being invisible. But something made her say yes. Something made her believe in one more chance. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was just luck. Maybe it was something inside Joan Crawford that refused to die. 2 weeks after almost leaving Hollywood forever, Joan Crawford began filming one of the greatest performances in movie history. The movie that would give her career back to her. The movie that would remind everyone who she was. Sometimes the greatest moments in life come just when you're about to give up. Bonus fact: the voice of experience. Here's something historians rarely talk about. Joan Crawford actually knew women like Mildred Pierce. Real women. Women she'd grown up with. Women she'd known in her first life, before she became famous. Joan's own mother had struggled. Joan's own childhood had been hard. She had memories of watching her mother work herself to exhaustion. She had memories of sacrifice. She had memories of mothers giving everything for their children. When Joan read the script, it wasn't just a story to her. It was her own life. It was her own mother. It was her own memories being turned into art. She wasn't playing a character. She was channeling her past. She was speaking for all the women she'd known. She was speaking for her mother. This is why the performance feels so real. This is why the pain is so visible. Joan Crawford wasn't acting in Mildred Pierce. She was remembering. She was witnessing. She was honoring every struggling woman she'd ever known. The magic happened because Joan brought her whole self to the role, not just her skill as an actress, but her heart as a human being. One small choice, the choice to use her own memories, changed movie history. Mildred Pierce is more than just a movie from 1945. It's a story about courage. It's a story about a woman who could have given up but didn't. It's a story about sacrifice and love and the complicated way that mothers and daughters hurt each other and need each other at the same time. Joan Crawford's comeback taught us something important, that it's never too late, that nobody can keep you down if you believe in yourself. That one good choice, one good moment, one good performance can change your entire life. The movie shows us what happens when you give everything you have to something you believe in. It shows us what real acting looks like. It shows us what real pain looks like. It shows us that beauty isn't about perfect curls and fancy clothes. Beauty is about a face that's lived, a face that's suffered, a face that's loved so hard it hurt. If you enjoyed these stories about Mildred Pierce and the incredible woman who brought it to life, please subscribe for more. We have so many more movies to explore, so many more secrets to uncover. Every film hides a truth about the people who made it. Every movie holds stories about courage and creativity and the magic that happens when people decide to be honest. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, the greatest performances in movie history come from people brave enough to be themselves.